a statue that shows the future. I think right now there's a lot of sort of question, concern, or just anticipation about what will happen in the near future. A lot of different things going on in our world with wars or anticipation of a war, of natural disasters, of political things, things between people, shootings, just a lot of different things in the world in general. And a lot of people, maybe yourself included, just have this question about, okay, what's going to be the end of all these things that we see? Is it going to be a good ending? Is it going to be something bad? Where is all of this going? And if it's something good, that it will be something good, is there a way that I can know that for sure and have a confident hope about it? I believe that we do have evidence of not just a good future, but the very best one that we can imagine. And there is evidence, the beginning of which that I want to go over together today, and that gives us that confident hope in the future. Over 2,000 years ago, in the kingdom of Babylon, if you know, there was a king, his name was King Nebuchadnezzar, and he had a very interesting dream that's recorded in the ancient book of the prophet Daniel. And we're just going to read through some of that and see what it says, and this dream about this statue that he has. So Daniel 2, and I'm going to start right from verse 1. So this is the second chapter in the prophet Daniel. It says, "Now in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. In the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. Then the king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king, and the king said to them, 'I have had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream.'" So he apparently has this really intense dream. And I don't know if you ever had a similar dream like that before. I dream all the time. It's sometimes like a whole movie. And so he has this dream, and he's calling all his crew together so that he can have a it says, "My spirit is anxious to know the dream." What does he mean by that? Let's look at verse 4. "Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. 'O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation.' The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, 'My decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. However, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation.'" So his people say to him, "Tell us what the dream was, and we'll give you an interpretation for it." And he says, "No, you don't understand. I also need you to tell me what the dream was." He apparently couldn't remember the dream. And this also stood as a test to those magicians, astrologers, and whatnot, if they really were who they claimed to be, whether they could tell the dream first or not just an interpretation. They answered again and said, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give its interpretation." So we're saying the same thing. The king answered and said, "I know for certain that you would gain time, because you see that my decision is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream, there is only one decree for you. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time is changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation." In verse 10, the Chaldeans answered the king and said, There is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. Wow, I think that's super interesting. So they themselves are saying, we basically are not who we claim to be. What you are asking us to do, only a divine being is capable of that. Verse 12, for this reason the king was angry and very furious, and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. So he's super upset about this, and he says, okay, I'm going to do what I said, and he says he makes the command to kill all the wise men of Babylon, and this process apparently begins. And now here it says that Daniel and his companions were also sought out to be killed. So a little bit of background is that Daniel was one of many of the Hebrews who were taken captive by Babylon some time before, and Daniel and his friends were some of those captives, and who were basically groomed in Babylon to be as part of this group of wise men. And if you read in chapter 1, you can read about that whole story, and there's really awesome interaction that happens between Daniel, his friends, and the high people of Babylon, and this test that they go through, and it's just a really awesome story. But so Daniel is part of these wise men, and he was a believer in God. And let's see how he responds. So verse 14 says, then with counsel and wisdom Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree from the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time that he might tell the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning the secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So he asked the king for some time before letting Arioch continue what he began to do, so that he could pray to God. And in verse 19 it says, then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So it says that God, he answered his prayer here. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven, and he gives this thankfulness, this he gives this acknowledge of thankfulness to God, and praise for what God just did. And he gets pretty deep in what he says, and I just want to read it. It says, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. So I think this sort of gives a hint as to what this dream is all about. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's demand. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to them, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation. So he just comes with confidence. God just reveals him what this dream was, and what the interpretation was, and he's going to the king. Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king. So he was pretty happy about this as well. And said thus to him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah who will make known to the king the interpretation. Then the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. So they gave them these sort of Babylonian names. All the Hebrews who had taken and had come over. Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? The king's asking him. Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. So I think this is really interesting and really cool how he says, hey, this isn't because of something that I simply have or talent that I have or because I'm so great or whatever. But no, it's this God in heaven, my God in heaven, who revealed this to me and who reveals secrets. So then he gets into it in verse 31, and let's just finish it off just before that. In verse 29, as for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this, and he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but for our sakes who make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart. So one grand purpose of this dream, Daniel says, was so that he would know, so that the king would know the thoughts of his heart. So there's this personal application that God wanted the king to make when he heard both the dream and the explanation of it by Daniel. God was trying to speak to him in a certain way. So verse 31, here's the dream. You, O king, are watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found, and the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Very interesting. So I have a little depiction here of what that statue image he saw in the dream looked like. So he had that head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and then down to the feet, partly of iron and partly of clay. And then what he sees finally is this stone that comes and strikes the statue at his feet that are partly of iron, partly of clay. Very interesting. So what does all this mean? Verse 36. This is the dream. And you can probably imagine at this point the king is like, wow, you just told my dream exactly, detail by detail. So you can just imagine how much anticipating he is to hear what the interpretation is. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. Verse 37. You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. So he says that he and his kingdom of Babylon is represented by this head of gold. That's very interesting because in Babylon, in that ancient time of Babylon, which is modern day Iraq, a lot of gold was used in the different building and the different monuments. They used a lot of gold in Babylon. So it's interesting that gold was used to sort of represent him in the dream. Verse 39, but after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. So it seems that these different metal representations of the statue are sort of a timeline of kingdoms, starting first with King Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, and then other succeeding kingdoms afterwards. So apparently, to Nebuchadnezzar's potential dismay, his kingdom wouldn't be one that would just be lasting forever. But we'll see which kingdom in this dream does last forever. Verse 40, and the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. Okay, so Babylon, I have some dates here, existed from about 605 BC to 539 BC, over around 2,500 years ago. And that's the kingdom that we see that was represented by its head of gold. So then that means another kingdom represented the chest and arms of silver, which in history we learn that the chest and arms of silver, and in history we learn that from about 539 BC to 331 BC was the kingdom of Medo-Persia. So it was kind of a two-part kingdom. You might have heard a lot of Persia, like a Persian rug, for example. And there was Media. That was sort of a second part to this kingdom. So Media or Medo-Persia, that was from about 539 to 331 BC. And they actually were known to use silver, for example, in some of their and a very known historical fact is the very strategic and And a very known historical fact is the very strategic way in which the Medo-Persian Empire took over Babylon, where they essentially dried up the river that goes under the city of Babylon. And while the Babylonians were just having their own time of their life, in the middle of the night, the Medo-Persians, they went underneath the city after they redirected the river and went in there and took it over. It was totally unexpected by the Babylonians. Very interesting. After the Medo-Persian Empire, we have, represented by the belly of thighs of bronze, was the Greek Empire, or the Kingdom of Greece. And the Greek Empire, which I remember learning a lot about in school, existed from about 331 BC up until 168 BC. 331 BC from 168 BC. And we, of course, today still have the country of Greece, which was one part of the Greek Empire. And it's said in the dream that that kingdom, represented by the bronze belly thighs, would be taken over by a kingdom of the Iron Lakes. Sorry, the focus is kind of... Well, who took over the Greek Empire? That was none other than the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, a very long-lasting empire in the scheme of history, was from 168 BC to 476 AD. Very long time. And it's very interesting because iron, which it's represented as legs of iron in this dream, was a metal that was used very often by Rome. And actually, there's a common saying or common phrase, the Iron Monarchy of Rome. And very interesting in the dream, in verse 40, it says that inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything, and like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. That is very accurate of the Roman Empire and how they conquered and just how they were in general. Very, very fascinating. And what did it say would happen? Or what if we look in history, what do we know happened after the Roman Empire? Who took over the Roman Empire, if you were to think about it? Well, nobody really took over. There wasn't just a one power or empire that took over the Roman Empire. After 476 AD, there were all these, leading up to 476 AD, there were all these sort of tribes, pockets of different tribes that are around the outside vicinity of the Roman Empire. And they started to try to attack and invade the Roman Empire. And it wasn't simply taken over by a bigger empire or one empire, but it divided. It broke apart into several pieces. And that's exactly what it says here in verse 41, where it says, whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay, partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. That's exactly what happened. And when we look in that part of the world today, what do we have? Modern day Europe. Still divided nations. We can call it the European Union, we know that exists, but it's still a collection of divided, of separate countries. And what did the dream say would happen next? In verse 44, and in the days of these kings, so talking about in the days of the divided feet, partly of iron and partly of clay, it says, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Wow. So if we are living now in the time of the feet partly of iron, partly of clay, or the divided Roman Empire, or modern day Europe that we call it, what's the next thing to happen according to the dream? The setting up of God's kingdom. That is something that is very good, that we can look forward to. That is amazing. That's the best thing that we can ever hope for or imagine. And if we know that so far up to this point, this dream that thousands of years ago was foretold, that Daniel interpreted for us, if so far at every step it has been accurate, perfectly accurate, can we trust that the next thing that it says will happen will actually occur? I think it's a good wager to make. And I think this is just one of many evidences of why we can have absolute confidence and hope in the future. My appeal to whoever is listening today, which also is a renewed appeal to myself, is if it is our desire to put our faith in that hope, in this hope of God's kingdom, and is it our desire to learn about this God who's going to set up this kingdom, and learn about all the things he has for us, the love that he has for us, what he's done for us. Is that your desire today? And is it your desire to continue to learn more about what the future holds and what actions to take today and how you can prepare for that next step in our future? I hope that this was a very helpful, a hope-filled reading and study, and I hope that it was not just informative, but something that has inspired you to seek more, to seek this God that is talking about, and to have that confident hope for the future. I'm going to go ahead and say a prayer now. God, thank you so much for giving us a envision of what we can expect in the future, and not just what we can expect, but something that is good, something that is amazing, something that can help us, Lord, to look forward to the future and what you have in store. And thank you for how you have chosen to be able to give us this evidence, Lord, in the future, because you have told us things before they come to pass, that when we see them come to pass, we can have faith, we can believe, and it's not just a blind faith or a blind belief. And we help us to just learn more about you, to know who you are, and to continue to seek you more and seek you and find you through a continued study of your word that you have given to us as a light for us today in our world. And I just pray this now and thank you in your name.